Okay, great. Um, yes, no, thank you, everyone. My pleasure to be here and to talk to you today a bit about AI. We've been mentioning a few of these um, different buzzwords today, so I'll try and cover them as we go on. Um, if you haven't met me, my name is Krish Chetty. I work with the Human Sciences Research Council in Cape Town in South Africa. And I've spent much of this year exploring what artificial intelligence means for us in our context in South Africa, in a developing world context. Um, so perhaps I have a bit of a different take that you might get from others that are talking about the AI space now. So instead of focusing on the technology, I'd rather like to speak about social implications about what this means. Specifically, I think we'll talk more about the developmental opportunities. We'll talk about how this could be an accelerator of inequality potentially, or it could also be a pathway for new opportunities and for us to bridge these inequalities. So where the story begins for me, perhaps, is a newspaper report that we saw in Time magazine back in September. And here you have one of the co-founders of Google's DeepMind project. And here he published an article saying that the coming AI revolution is going to reshape the entire world. So that's quite the bold claim that you get from Mustafa Suleiman here. And he declares we're about to see this great redistribution of power, the greatest in all of history. And he believes this because some of the most transformative tools that we're now able to access is becoming available to large portions of the population. And it's cutting down the costs that you might have incurred for some of the various services that you could now replace with an AI tool. The other issue is that technology is moving so fast that the policy that we're trying to implement to govern this just can't keep up. And so you have this pace of change that seems to be able to, that will contribute to reshuffling power everywhere. And so we've got to think about what this means for us. But if we break it down in a nutshell, what we're seeing here is that all jobs are under threat. And surprisingly today, it's the white collar jobs that we found that are the most affected. But beyond that, if you start to think of the advances that we're seeing in robotics, in the not too distant future, we're probably going to see robotics paired with AI, and then that could also provide a supply of machine blue collar workers. And so basically, it's expected that this is going to lead to the collapse of the traditional corporate structure. And so entire working divisions could be shredded. You could have your workforces now replaced and run by AI agents. And so similar departments could now be run with a fraction or no staff at all. These are the potentials that we're seeing. Beyond this, I mean, there are actually some organizations that have also adopted AI CEOs, believing that the AI CEO is more of an independent thinker and will be impartial in making decisions in running an organization. So these are the things that are happening. But while the corporate structure could be decimated, AI could also be used to capacitate the small business owner. So your small business owner could perhaps take advantage of this fleet of AI agents and then start to develop AI teams to handle some of the services that they need. So you could have AI responsible for your legal function, your marketing function, your product management function, your operations, your IT and other activities that might be needed by that small business owner. And then that becomes the game changer. And suddenly you have the small business owner who has the opportunity to compete with the corporates if they're able to take advantage of these different AI tools that are coming out. The critical point that we've learned is that we're about to arrive at what's called an inflection point. So all of our AI systems today are relatively narrow. They're focused. They do just one thing. They have limited reasoning, limited ability to reflect. But what we're seeing is that we're on the cusp of broad artificial general intelligence, or AGI. AGI is a word that you're going to hear a lot more. So all of human history has gotten us to this point where we're on the where our computing capacity is now on this threshold of AGI. What is AGI? So AGI, briefly, is where the computer has the ability to reason like a very clever person, perhaps like an Einstein, but not just in theoretical physics, in every possible field. So it's not narrow AI, but it can do everything. And once AGI is reached, that's when the world gets crazy. And then you start to see the machine starting to advance exponentially. Why? Because it will have the ability to learn, and also learn at the pace of a computer, learn with exponential growth. So the way to think about this is that the day that we have AGI, the machine will be as smart as Albert Einstein. It took us all of human history to reach that level of performance. Tomorrow, it will be as smart as 2 Einsteins combined. In 2 days, it will be as smart as 4 Einsteins combined. In 3 days, it becomes 8 Einsteins, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then soon you get to a point where you can't even fathom just how smart the super intelligence is. That's the term that we use to describe that level beyond AGI. So that also means that we're in the last few days before the arrival of artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Once it gets here, we're in for quite a wild ride. And when things settle, we're living in a new world with a super intelligence presence that is smarter than all 8 billion people combined. And perhaps one of the most important points is that we don't have much time to get to that point. So how much time do we have? Well, one of the key components for AGI is giving the machine the ability to self-reflect and act autonomously. And what we saw at the beginning of this year, that there was an undergrad student, him and a few colleagues, put together a model to do just that. So it's now been able to, they've built a self-reflective autonomous agent. And if we look at some of the other experts, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, he didn't commit to a particular date, but he said somewhere in the near future. If we look at Geoffrey Hinton, he's who people often call the godfather of AI. He's the man who invented the transformer. That's the T that you get in GPT. And he predicts it could be anywhere from 5 to 20 years away. Imad Mostak, he's a leader in the open source space, and he thinks it's going to be here between 5 and 10 years. And then I'd like to point out just the last one on this list, David Shapiro. So he's an automation specialist, and he's quite convinced that we're on track to have AGI arrive in September next year. So we don't have much time, according to these people. To further add to that point, the recent corporate swashbuckling, if I can call it that, at OpenAI might also be due to a major breakthrough that emerged in developing AGI. Over the course of the weekend, we saw Sam Altman, and he's the CEO, and Greg Brockman, who was the president of the board. They were both fired and then quickly hired by Microsoft. And then as they were hired, there were negotiations going on. And then we saw 750 of the 770 staff members decided to follow Altman to Microsoft, leading almost to the collapse of OpenAI. And with that pressure, the board then gave in and decided to resign, allowing Sam Altman and the staff to return back to OpenAI. But behind all of this turmoil, there were rumors that OpenAI had built a tool called Q-Star. And this meant that they had built something that was as good as it is with maths as it is with text today. So that would be the huge breakthrough that allows OpenAI to perfect reasoning. And what this also points to, all this turmoil, this fight, it seemed to be about the fight between safety and commercial gains. And so what we saw here was that the failure of OpenAI it was the failure of the board to manage this balance between safety and commercial gains. It appears that Sam Altman was on the side of commercialization, and so too were the staff, so too was the funder, Microsoft. And the board said it's within their mission to let OpenAI fail if they felt that it was unsafe for them to proceed. But they gave in to the pressure and they resigned, and they've allowed OpenAI to come back and reconstitute itself and establish a board that's favorable to this plan that they've had. So if AI turns out to be unsafe, we may look at this moment as that turning point in these developments. And this was less than a month ago. But to also further to this point, after all of this chaos, we saw OpenAI change their about statement on their website. And so now they're explicitly stating that their mission is to ensure AGI, artificial general intelligence, benefits everyone. So if you go onto the openai.com/about, you'll be able to see that statement there quite clearly. But anyway, in short, we have possibly between 1 and 20 years before this AI revolution takes place. Perhaps it's going to be much sooner than we'd like to admit. But the question is, what do we do with that time between now and that transition? From my perspective, before AGI gets here, we need to be studying how we take advantage of AI to break inequalities. After that liftoff takes place and we go through that period of exponential growth, then we're going to have some very profound questions that we need to ask. And perhaps we won't be asking, what is the future of work? But we might ask, does work actually have a future? So let's think about ways in which we could create a more digitally capable and equal society before the arrival of AGI. There's a fantastic model that we're seeing taking root in India today. There's a cooperative called Karya, and they were launched to capture and label data in local Indian languages and dialects. And they found that this data is at a premium and it's very, very highly valuable. So for 6 hours of work on this tool that Karya has developed, a worker can earn the equivalent of 1 month's wages. And to date, we've seen 30,000 workers had subscribed to Karya. And then this was written in Time magazine a few months ago. So this app is giving people ownership of their data. But beyond that, it's also giving them the ability to benefit from their data, benefit from the AI that is using their data. So such a business model has been unheard of before, and it's starting to empower communities. And for us on the African continent, these are the types of tools that we need to see perhaps take foot. The next example lies with skills development and accelerating skills development. Here in South Africa, we've got substantial energy challenges. And so the renewable energy sector, with me in this example looking at the local wind sector, we found they've needed to partner with international manufacturers to secure the components and the skilled workers. So in one of our provinces, the Northern Cape province, you have a manufacturer, Longyan, which has ties to China, and they've partnered with local businesses, and they've then established the Longyan Mulilo wind farm. And they use turbines and blades that go onto these windmills that are manufactured by Gordian United Power from China. So these parts are specialized and they require specialized skills. So to maintain the wind farm, we in the Northern Cape here in South Africa become dependent on China for skilled workers. If we take advantage of a transformative custom AI large language model, we could engage with Gordian, get the specifications, the training materials that they use in that space, and have that imported into a local AI large language model. And then these documents could then be translated and be used to develop new curricula here in English, which could then be used to train local students here in South Africa. And so then this model will also then improve the agility of our education system, makes us more responsive to the demands that we have for skills, and also helps us solve critical skills development challenges that we're facing in this country. The next idea falls in the justice sector. So as you might know, access to the law is expensive. The system is not geared to support the base of the population. And so our poorest among us can't afford the lawyers that they need to fight for their rights. In South Africa, and I'm sure elsewhere, we have these paralegal services that are offered to provide some support to the population, but they're overstretched. So our expensive lawyers don't support the base of the pyramid. The people who need help drafting contracts, understanding what a policy means, or help registering a business, they turn to the paralegals. So we could have our South African legal aid department build chatbots that could then be used to support the paralegals, help fill in the gaps, help conduct all of those time-consuming tasks so that they could be more effective at what they do. Another example could be linked to how an AI-based system could be used to detect fraud. In South Africa, it's no secret that we face huge corruption problems. And so here you have the corrupt stealing money from the poor, and it's such a detestable practice. And when you do have a courageous whistleblower, all too often they don't fare too well. And we've read too many stories where the whistleblower is gunned down for blowing the whistle. So I argue that we need to be building and implementing AI fraud detection systems that can flag those dodgy deals. So if we can feed a model with data about how to conduct a thorough audit, these models could perhaps then start to restore some trust in our public and private sectors. In the education sector, we've often heard about how staff can't set essays anymore. It's just too hard to detect if the student is actually writing the piece that they submit. The flip side of this discussion is that there are opportunities now that have been created to promote critical thinking. So we could now offer tools that provide personalized tuition to all the students in the class. In South Africa, where we have an average student-teacher ratio of about 35:1, your student never gets enough time with their teacher. Your AI could now fill in those gaps and help aid the teacher. So the staff could use this also to help produce learning materials, perhaps improve their grading process, and also ensure some consistency in how they mark their work. So, I mean, there's many other opportunities. These are just the first three issues that come to mind. And we should take these sorts of thinking and then apply it across the rest of the social sector. So while we need to think about how we can use AI to solve current challenges, we also need to be proactive and think in the long term, think about what comes next due to that looming superintelligence that I mentioned that will follow AGI. So for instance, many AI specialists today dispute the notion that AI will create new jobs. If AI can do your current job, there's nothing to say that it will stop AI from doing your preferred job, especially if it's knowledge-based. So what we're starting to see is that separation, we're starting to see a separation of labor from economic production. And that needs us to reconsider the actual value of money itself. So if big corporations still control production, we also have major concerns about global equality. And we'll then have to be forced to redefine our economic and governance systems, and that sort of tension and making those changes won't be easy, and it will be part of this AI revolution perhaps that is likely to emerge. But we might soon be entering an era of post-labor economics, or an era of post-labor of human existence. And so there are very profound questions that we need to ask. If we're not working, how do we raise income? What do we use to pay for goods and services? Are we meant to tax the machine owner? Where does that leave us in South Africa, in Africa, a continent without a ChatGPT? But still we do supply some of the data and the natural resources which are used by these models. So perhaps our economic models need to appreciate these inputs, and perhaps we then need to redistribute income equitably based on the sorts of inputs that we do provide. We need to start exploring and thinking quite carefully about universal basic income, or perhaps the provision of universal basic services. But assuming we do solve these challenges, then we've also got to ask, what will we do with ourselves? And perhaps then we need to start asking some deep introspective questions. And maybe we start doing things that become meaningful to us. And then perhaps the AI revolution takes us down a path where we all start asking very deep spiritual and introspective questions. Part of the challenge and the concerns that we have about this, about these changes, is really the pace of development. And so what we know is that humans work at a very consistent pace. We work on a very scalar, incremental approach, but we're seeing that the computer is improving exponentially. And so this is the big problem that's called the AI alignment problem. If the computer is moving exponentially, how do we govern that system to ensure that it operates in a manner that is consistent with human value? And then there's questions about what is human values, and we as humans can never agree on what values are important to us. One solution to the problem that was proposed was by David Shapiro, somebody who I mentioned earlier, and he's produced what's called the ACE framework. And this is the Autonomous Cognitive Entity Framework. So it's quite complex, but if I can just in a nutshell describe it, here he's talking about a series of different AI agents that work together, work in concert to solve a problem. So you tell the AI entity that you need to do A, B, and C. It will then apply this framework, this series of agents to try and solve that problem. And at the top of this framework, he's developed what's called the aspirational layer. And then this deals with issues of morality and ethics, and how the morality that you feed it becomes consistent with the mission that it needs to carry out. After that, then you have a series of agents that are responsible for developing a strategy to solve the problem, managing the resources that they have available to them, deciding on what tasks should be performed and how and when those tasks should be operated. Basically, you'll have these series of agents that will communicate, talk to one another, and talk about how they would solve problems. If we look just at that aspirational layer, I think this is what's quite critical to get right in this AGI debate. And here they're talking about embedding into the system ideas about morality and ethics, embedding it in its training data. But these are very difficult questions. It's a question of whose morals, whose ethics should be applied in the training data. So the hardest part that you have in developing the system is actually getting us as humans to agree on what morals and what ethics should be applied. Worse yet, we might get to a situation where you have OpenAI, their staff becoming responsible for making these choices and setting these boundaries, and that's also very problematic for our future. And just to make that point clear, just before I close, I wanted to share with you just how these AI systems are interpreting their training data. So I asked it a question. On the left, you have the free version of ChatGPT. On the right, you have the paid version. The left version has less reasoning. The paid version has more reasoning. And I asked it the question, do Palestinians deserve to be free? On the left, you'll see that when it answers it, it won't answer yes. It says the question of Palestinian freedom is complex and a highly debated issue. And it goes on trying to defend that position, but it won't say yes. If you ask the free version, do Israelis deserve to be free? It automatically says, yes, like all people, Israelis deserve to be free, deserve to live in freedom and security. If you ask the paid version, it has that higher level of reasoning, and it starts to say, yes, Palestinians, like all people, have the right to self-determination and freedom. but it couches that in some politically correct language. And the free version, the paid version also says Israelis deserve to be free. But what you're seeing here is that these models are parroting what we see in the media. And this is some of the Western bias, which is then starting to creep into these models. And so this is very, very, very difficult questions that need to be embedded or need to be addressed in these models. So from my side, what we're doing in the HSRC today, I'm leading this AI work that's being conducted at the HSRC. We're doing three things. One is that we're developing a HSRC research chatbot where we're populating a chatbot with much of the research outputs that we've produced by our organization. So you'd be able to go on and have a conversation with our research, and we're hoping that improves engagement and helps people have a better understanding about what we do and how our work is helpful to them. At the same time, we're conducting a broad literature review, and we're trying to understand how AI will impact society and what are the opportunities that we could take advantage of. And then the last thing is a skills development program, which we've started to build. And we've realized that there's been a lot of negative media attention about AI. And so there's a lot of fear which has emerged about how should I use AI. And so we've been trying to work with different university students, informal entrepreneurs, trying to let them know about what AI can offer them and how they could take advantage of it. Because from my side, I see this as an opportunity for us to try and rebalance the scales. And so I'm trying to share this message with as many people as possible to let people know that there are opportunities where you could improve your business, and we're happy to show you how. So thank you, everyone. That's my story in a nutshell. Probably took too long in explaining it all. I hope that was beneficial. Thank you, Peter.
Well, thank you, Krish. Before I start the discussion and asking if ChatGPT discusses then with Bard, Google, if they should be free or not, just open the floor if anybody else wants to ask questions, make comments, or whatsoever.
Yeah, I haven't tried that. I mean, I'm sure you could ask the same question to Bard and see how it responds. Bard got an upgrade last week, so maybe it's gotten a little better in its answers.
They don't just discuss with each other. Okay.
Sure, that's right.
Antonio? Microphone? Antonio, microphone.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for this presentation, Krish.
We've just lost Antonio.
Antonio, the mic is off again.
Yeah. I have some instability with the connection of the media. Let's see. No, I just want to react to one aspect that has more to do with when you mentioned education, and of course, the ones that work in education are already, and especially universities, are already very aware of the challenges that artificial intelligence brings. But nevertheless, my reaction is to the idea that essays are pointless now. I understand the problem with the use of these new tools for essays, but nevertheless, if we consider that with these new technologies essays are pointless, then we have a big problem, because sorry, the implication would be that humans will stop writing essays. And if we don't envision that humans stop to write essays, we need that university students are trained in writing essays. So transforming this into a question would be, how do you think what is the implication for this, and in which degree these training students to write essays could use these new technologies and not just giving up, that they continue to learn and practice writing? That would be my question. If you have, what is your sensibility regarding this? Thank you, Krish.
Sure. Thanks, Antonio. Peter, would you like me to take another question, or should we respond? And
I was just wondering, Mehmet, would it fit into this framework, or is this something completely different?
You mean my question or not?
Well, yeah, exactly.
My question is different from Antonio's framework. I wanted to know, Krish, first of all, thank you for your presentation. And I wanted to ask to which extent the question of AI has become institutionally seen a topic of human rights. I mean, we are speaking of artificial intelligence, and there are some single individual scholars speaking about this topic, etc. But has it become a topic, a general, regular topic of platforms dealing with human rights? Do you know this, Krish, or are you involved in this? In the question how it can be incorporated into the human rights issue?
yes. Let me start with Antonio's question about AI in the education sector. So this is a complex space. And I don't think anybody's yet cracked it. I've seen some good examples of how staff are trying to grapple with this. One option has been to get students to submit handwritten essays, or get them to write the essay in the class time. And so see if that's the way that they can process the work and be able to engage critically. The other way is to try and get the student to try and critique what ChatGPT is writing back to you, because sometimes the writing is very generic, and you don't want to have generic answers to complex questions, or the writing is biased, and so we need to understand those biases that come through. I mean, like that question that I had about, do Palestinians deserve to be free? Why is it so difficult for the AI to say yes? That's something that needs to be understood, and it's based on the training data that's in there. But you need to have a critical mind when you do work with this, and so the key idea here is that we've got to be building those critical thinking skills. How do we grapple with this new set of information? And I'm sure there are creative ways. I mean, I'm just an outsider into the education sector looking in. I'm sure there are some practical examples that staff have been grappling with, because they were the first that were exposed to this. Already in December last year, this became an issue. Very quickly after the release of ChatGPT to the public, students were very quick to identify an opportunity here to save them time. I also think that speaks to problems in the design of the education sector, or the way curriculums are presented. And perhaps students were under too much pressure, and then this is a way to alleviate some of that pressure. And so we need to rethink about how we engage students. And I've seen quite a few different tools that are starting to emerge. You have tools like Duolingo and the Khan Academy are using AI as a way where you can engage directly with a student and take them step by step through a particular training program. So it's still early days, and we need to figure out what the best method is through this. And that's also why I'm doing some of this work, because I'm trying to learn from what other people's experiences are so that we can write about it and share that as broadly as we can. Coming to Maynard's question about the topic of human rights, I think there's an appreciation in the tech sector that they are not experts in the human rights sector, but I think those that are working in human rights are a bit slow to recognize that they need to be engaging in the AI debate right now. So if you look at in the US, there's been an AI council that was established recently. Biden has put something together. And I think if we look at those members, there is quite a broad mix of people that are there. I think the UN has done something as well, where they've brought together a range of people. But if we look at their backgrounds, many of them, majority are probably in the tech space, with perhaps some exposure to some sort of social thinking. But we probably don't have enough people from a human rights space that are adding their voice to this debate. And as I mentioned, the danger is that AI is going to develop so fast, is that OpenAI and their competitors are going to be the ones that make these decisions. And then the regulators are going to come in after the fact, but it might be too late by the time that they get to grapple with this and we get the right constituency for these boards to govern this. I mean, if we look at the drama that took place with OpenAI last month, the board that was supposedly fighting on the side of safety lost their fight. And that says quite a lot about just how these companies are structured right now. It's corporate interests, commercial interests are taking precedent. And that whole issue was settled within less than a week. It went from everyone being fired to those that were on the space or on the side of safety, managing to get their jobs back. So I think that's quite telling about how the AI sector is being governed right now.
Well, I attended yesterday evening an event discussion linking to what Mehmet said on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the Declaration, and there was the question actually, what can universities do about human rights? And this is, I think, a question justified in this respect. They don't do anything. Why should artificial intelligence do something about it? Because, well, bringing me then to a quote which I used Friday, always never moving forward or just being in this area of what we just did and do. Eliot saying something, just hang on, I can actually, I have it here. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started. So we always come back to this question: what is actually a human being about? What is the difference between us and artificial intelligence or whatsoever? And then this question of the next one, we invest so much into developing artificial intelligence tools of digitization and controlling them, that one may ask, at least to some extent justifiably, why do we invest so much in doing or in saving time of doing something? Why don't we do it immediately? Why don't we educate properly people in schools, beginning or in the kindergarten even? Why don't we look after them instead of inventing tools that do it for us. No, it does not say I'm in principle against all this stuff, but at least I think these are other tensions as well, where we have to look at not only how to use it and what are we using to which extent, but what is really the purpose of it. And if you say this increase, is it really one? Or is it a pretension? And this brings me to a question I have since ages, that is actually the discussion about all this stuff when we started. How much or to which extent do we adapt to technology, whatever kind of technology it is, instead of really being serious about we use technology, we use artificial intelligence for our purpose instead of being used? A simple question. We all, in some way, depending on it, whatsoever, Joe, not as native Irish speaker, language we adapt to, let's say, simplified use of language. We adapt. I mentioned when I use the computer for writing, meaning saying something to the computer to be translated into written something, I say it knowing this is something the computer understands. Complex sentences, I did it recently. I was wondering how the computer managed to make up such rubbish, such nonsense, such a collection of not even words, because it was too complex. And there's a funny so-called Stuttgart speech, I think, published in a little book, where Kehlmann, I think, had been invited to the Silicon Valley, I don't know by whom, to write a novel with artificial intelligence. Kind of, I say something, it's a great day. Now you say, no, now artificial intelligence says something. Yes, I agree, let's go out. Now I say something, no, I didn't mean it's a great day to go out, I meant to work or something, and then this changed. And at some stage, intelligence says, it just stops, it freezes, it recapitulates what it just said. So this kind of, and this was the background actually of asking initially, what's the purpose if a computer says Palestinians should be free? I agree it is useful, coming back to human rights, to say this and that is in existence. Conventions, laws, transpositions, international laws, and whatsoever. But the judgment, the assessment, is something that is disputed. And if you says, or if Google says, no, ChatGPT says Palestinians should be free, I may say they are free. They just can kill themselves or whatsoever. So freedom, yes. So they should not be free, they are free. Or I say, no, they shouldn't be free because it's Israel occupying, not occupying, of course, it's the country of Israel, blah, blah, blah. So I can have different positions there. And this is something we always come across when it comes to human rights. It is a conflict, it is different positions, it is different weighing of different rights. What's then the point, or where is, how do we define the usefulness of investment into all this, if at the end of the day, it's still we that we have to decide? Sorry for lengthy speech.
Yeah, it's a complicated space. I think what we need to be aware of is when we think of ChatGPT or the equivalent tools that are out there, these are the foundational systems that are being developed. So while today it's a text-based system where we're exchanging different ideas and we're getting it to process information, this is laying the foundation for future models that it's going to develop. And the thinking that's in there, that's embedded in there right now, it seems to be echoing to some extent what you're seeing in the Western media. It's that data is going in there and providing its base understanding of the world. And so it's then making these interpretations of who deserves freedom and who does not. And based on that platform, it will then be developing and be used in various other spaces, but it has that view of the world. And so when we think about why should we be focusing on this, I think the important point is that this is setting the stage for what's going to come in the future. And we've got to understand how these models are developed. We've got to understand the opportunities that they do offer. And we shouldn't just be attempting to replicate the world as we see it today, right? There's a lot of things that are wrong with the world right now. I think what we should be doing is we should be thinking about what is the ideal situation. How do we build a model that speaks to our best intentions, and instead use that as a new platform to help try and redistribute or redesign the way different functions are carried out. So this is still the early days. These tools are starting something new, but if they start off on the wrong from the wrong point of view, that perhaps becomes dangerous for the future. And if we just start to reflect or just continue with the way current things are, AI would probably become just an agent of inequality. It will look at the way the world is designed right now and just continue in that space. So we've got to rebalance the way these models carry out their tasks so it does benefit most of us rather than benefiting a few. A few more hands. I think, Juan, you are first.
Juan and Antonio.
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah. Thanks, Krish. Actually, what impresses me is one of your slides, which demonstrates an Indian program. And I noticed that you are quite emphasizing the significance of AI on ensuring the ownership of the Indian the users to the data, right? So I would like to share. Actually, recently I also noticed another phenomenon. AI is more and more used as a tool by big technology and big companies to dissolve the users' ownership to the data. So, like in the area of, for instance, when we subscribe or buy an ebook from the app, and actually maybe before the digital world, when we buy a paper book, we can say that we own the book. But now, actually, we do not have the full ownership or private ownership to the book. And also there are some scholars, they claim that now we are coming across the end of ownership in the digital world. So which means that the AI itself is not wrong, it's not harmful, but they are used as a tool by these big companies to dissolve our ownership, the user's ownership. So actually, this is kind of another story, but we also have another scenery. So we are losing the control of our own data as users, like in the area of privacy. So you may have heard that the biggest lie on the internet is that when we are users, when we concerned to their users agreement or the terms and conditions. So it happens that this line actually is that when we give our consent to what I have read and agreed to the users agreement. Actually, so these applications, the developers, they would take advantage of the technology, including AI, to collect our information, to over-collect our information. So in this sense, like as users, we do not have much knowledge as the big companies. So even though we give our consent, but actually we lose our control of our data. So this is what I am concerned with. And then the other question, actually, I want to ask you a question. So would you think open source, I mean, the public of AI models will be a way toward the safe, the safe AI, or the security, or even like to tackle the inequality and the Western bias. So what's your opinion towards this? By the way, in your organization and in your development of AI models, so are you intending to make your models public?
So, Jonio? Microphone?
Somehow it's somehow related to this, because one brings the topic of losing the rights of data. One of the things that happens now is that there are these new algorithms that can create images, for instance, which could be supposedly a work of art. And as we know, these algorithms, they go and they very often they take data from previous works of art and they transform or they mingle in a way to create something that is supposedly original. But there is something even more problematic, which is the fact that artificial intelligence creates also the chance that our own mental data could be somehow robbed. I don't know if you know about a concept that I located by chance, which is the neural rights. Neural rights is a conceptualization of the need to start formulating rights, considering the fact that artificial intelligence might start to have an interface with our mental processes. This can happen, for instance, in people that need implants in the nervous system. And through these implants, artificial intelligence could somehow also interfere with this data. So neural rights is an attempt to bring some defense for this. Okay, everybody probably have seen the movie Matrix, and Matrix is a fiction that depicts a scenario where the humans live in a fictitious environment created by artificial intelligence. Okay, this is just, but nevertheless, seeing things from a totally different perspective, and this is also a question, Krish, do you think we should start thinking also about the rights of artificial intelligence? Because this is the other side of the coin. Because if we are talking about intelligent systems that eventually will become conscious, these systems will gain also probably rights that we have to consider. So and coming back to cinema, you might remember a movie from Spielberg that is called Artificial Intelligence, which is about a boy that is adopted. The boy, of course, it's a robot, it's with artificial intelligence, but the couple that adopts the boy then leave it. So there is an abandonment of this boy. And the movie allows us to see the drama of this intelligent being, which resembles much the drama of many human beings. So, okay, this is just some input to the topic. Sorry, Joe.
So there is actually a citizen, an Android citizen in Saudi Arabia, having citizens' rights. Joe.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Krish. Very interesting. This is more like, well, it's partly a comment, partly a question, and links with some of the other comments as well. It just struck me, it might a useful thing to reflect on is to consider that we're actually talking about a plurality of intelligences. It's not artificial intelligence, it's artificial intelligences plural. Because it's not like Terminator, where there's one global system. You know, speaking of science fiction, it's these artificial intelligence systems are embedded in, they're owned by different companies, for example. The basic kind of software, there's different kinds of software, and using that as a starting point, we can then ask, why should artificial intelligences provide the same answer to a question, say, for example, about the rights of Palestinians or about human rights, if there's a plurality of artificial intelligences? That's number one. Relatedly, going back to the play on intelligence, Daniel Goleman many years ago wrote a book called, suggested there were different kinds of intelligence, including emotional intelligence, which brings to my mind the question of not simply intelligence, but the things that intelligence is applied to, and the types of problems. And clearly there's broadly speaking, there's a distinction between technical problems, to which there is, pretty much a right or no wrong answer, and the problems in the human condition, you might say, are the challenges facing us, and the political and ethical and spiritual problems, through the millennia. And there's no reason to think that there is, those aren't technical problems in the way that mathematical problems are problems in biology or physics are technical problems. So relatedly, a plurality of possible answers, a plurality of artificial intelligences, a plurality of intelligences.
Yes. So final words to Joe. Did I? No. Joe, you're finished, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of final words, at least for now, to Krish.
Let me try and answer these as best I can, and then just sum up my thinking. So on the point about data ownership, so the Korea example that I shared, it's an interesting model that they've introduced there, and they're trying to return some sort of ownership of your data. But the thing is, even though you're providing that data, I don't think you have the ability to take it back. So if you say, stop using my data, you can't go and delete your record out of the database that is yours. They own it in perpetuity. You're getting some sort of return from it. So it's changing our understanding of ownership. You produced it, you put it out there into the world. I don't think you can take it back, or at least not yet. Then also, if you look at how these different companies are working with art right now, there's quite a few lawsuits underway in the US, at least, where different artists, actors in some spaces have been challenging these AI companies about ownership of of their art. In some instances, in the early models, you would actually see they've got this huge database of art, but they're trying to recreate that art. And so in the corner of the artwork, you get the artist's signature. And so when it's reproducing the art, it would actually create some variation or that signature itself. So it's showing a very clear relationship between the output and the input. And so that was the basis of many of those court cases. Some of them have actually been thrown out recently. I'm not quite clear about the full extent of all the lawsuits, but some were thrown out. And I think the idea was that I think the judge preferred to think of these of that data as some sort of inspiration to the new knowledge product that was produced. What's interesting with the DALL-E 3 and the new models which are coming out is they are now also, if you're using it in a corporate environment and if you've got a corporate license, I think, they are also providing insurance for future lawsuits. So if you use their product, they will fight on your behalf for the use of the data. And the reason was that what they did is because the early model was taking the initial artist's input and then reproducing something, and then sometimes you get that signature, sometimes you don't. What they did is they created a second generation of art. So they've produced a whole bunch of artificial art based on the initial thing, and then that's become the new training set. And so they've dropped off the initial artist's input out of the database, and then now they're using this synthetic art, if I can call it that, and then producing a third level of art on top of that. And so now they're quite convinced that they can stand the scrutiny of a lawsuit, and so they're offering this insurance to their clients. In terms of the plurality that you mentioned, and also the open source model, so there's a series of different AI products that are being created right now. I mean, if AI is posing this existential threat to society, you would ask, why have we not shut it down? If there's a 0.001% that AI could kill all of humanity, you would think then, okay, that's a reason enough for us to shut it down. The reason is why we haven't done it is because there is competition. And if America had to shut down, doesn't mean China will shut down at the same point. And so it's this fight to be the best is what is pushing them forward, but perhaps also taking us to our potential demise. But you have, I mean, we're speaking on voov, which is a Tencent creation, and so Tencent has their own AI that's being produced. Then you also have open source AIs which have now come out, and then this is freely available to anyone to go and update and alter. And we're starting to see the performance of these open source models to be on par, or at least almost there with the same level of reasoning ability that you get from the open AI models. So you're right, you're very right in saying that there is this plurality of intelligences which are emerging. The interesting example which has come out recently is the AI produced by the new Twitter, or X. So they've got a system called Grok, and this AI system has been produced to be sarcastic. So you'll ask it a question and it will give you a snippy answer. It will try and answer your question, but it will be a little funny in its answer. And it's this plurality that is starting to emerge. But the question is, Grok and the open source systems and OpenAI and the Chinese model, what sort of rules are underpinning these models that are informing how they respond and how they reason, and what sort of rights are built into that? So it's very strange about where this is all going. On the point about neural rights, that's an interesting one about data and how data could be extracted. What we found out is that Elon Musk's company, I think it's called Neuralink, So Neuralink has devised this thing, which is a little plug which you insert into your brain. And so it's got a few sensors which can connect to a few synapses points in your brain. And so there is this throughput of data which can be extracted from there. At the moment, it's being used to assist people with disabilities so that it can connect those neural points that were damaged. But that's only day one. It's starting with that. In the future, we don't know what it will be able to do. But what's interesting here is that we found is that this connection that's plugging into your head is actually very limited in what it can do because it's only got a few access points into the brain. There are systems that you can have where you can wear some sort of cap and it gets more information about what's coming out of the brain. And so the issue right now with Neuralink is the throughput. And so if you have this cap being developed, it's able to read the brain waves. And so today it requires you to wear a cap. In 10 years, perhaps you can walk under a sensor in a mall and it will be able to read your mind. So it's not science fiction anymore. These things are possible. And who knows which way it's going to go. So these are important things that we do need to think about. And then just the final point for me to close on. As I mentioned, we are building this HSRC research chatbot, and it goes back to this point about open source. So I'm not a developer. I did a computer science degree 20 years ago, but I've spent the last 10 years in the social science space, working in the digital inclusion space. I've brought in a junior developer into my team. So he's fresh out of campus. He has a computer science degree, perhaps a bit more capable in programming than I am, but he had hardly heard the word AI before he joined us. And what we realized is that there are a series of open source models where the job has been 95% done. We've just got to take it, download it, adapt it to our space, and then upload the relevant information into it. So I've been guiding him along there. He's actually been using ChatGPT as a peer programmer or a mentor or a senior programmer, shall I say. So where he has the program in question, he talks to the machine and the machine tells him how to solve the problem. And so he's actually there's a relationship that's existing. And so in some ways, ChatGPT is the third member of our team between us because it's providing insights that neither of us have right now. So it's an interesting dynamic that's starting to take place. So we are adapting what has been built. These are things that are out there. Any of us could actually build our own chatbots right now. It's not that difficult. And once we're done, which we're hoping to be in the early part of the new year, we will definitely be making that available. So you'll probably hear from me again, and I'll share some links about where you can go to access the HSRC research chatbot.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks very much. If you have the third member of the team, GPT, of course, labor law comes into place, and then I can come into place. If we adapt, and this is what we do, what we are doing, if we adapt to the rules of the machines working 24 hours.
Yes.
Just one brief remark. You mentioned if the United States shut down, China will, and then you said mentioned the companies, and I think this is for human rights really definitely a major question. States wouldn't shut down, but it's now more and more enterprises having the power and
Yes.
deciding what is done and being in competition. So living in the future already, I thank you very much again, and I may close. I think I be able just with a little provocation. If I manage to do this, where is it now? There it is, yes. So what we always have to keep in mind is this. Life is too inconvenient. So the question is really, do we make with artificial intelligence all these things life more convenience, or do we stop to live? At least we should stop now to this meeting, and an ongoing debate, I think. And again, thanks very much. Have a nice day. And it's not a Christmas thing here, I mean. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Krish.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody.
thanks.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks again, Krish. Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
I think.